Book discussion, The Passenger by Cormac McCarthy. This is one of those books that I think it's an epoch-defining, massive oeuvre of literature, of art, of this is what human beings are all about. This piece of literature is why it's worth reading literature, why we have to keep doing writing and reading literature, because it asks all the questions that nobody else can ask, no scientist, no philosopher. This is what literature does. It asks the difficult questions, and it does it in a beautiful way. It's beauty, and it's thought at its best. This book, to me, is in the league of that Zauberberg, of Dr. Faustus, of The Grapes of Wrath, of Somerset Maugham's books. For me, those are the big sort of pieces of literature, and Cormac McCarthy is in that league for me. He's a contemporary artist, so that's great. So it's actually rare to have literature that is contemporary, that there's actually a person you can talk to. This is not just in his books. I'm not even sure I want to talk to Cormac McCarthy. I don't think I want to meet the person. I'm happy with his books, nothing against him. I'm just saying that this part of actually, there's a section in the book that talks about ideas and writing down ideas and how ideas have their own life, and by writing them down we sort of limit and handicap them, and maybe we should be more patient with them and let them evolve. And I think it's the same with my idea that I have about this book. I want to just nurture it. I want it to evolve, and maybe talking to Cormac could even limit that type of experience. But that's besides the point. Again, The Passenger, it's a massive book. It asks the questions that nobody else can ask. No artist, no scientist, no philosopher. This is what literature really does. Literature asks the questions that nobody else can answer. I once asked my business school professor, when am I going to learn how to make money? And he said, oh, you want to learn that? That's the poetry department. We here learn how to manage money, not how to make money. So this is of course a little bit of a sarcastic joke. I think it was actually Professor Zingalis who said that. I'm not sure, but it would fit his intellectual wit. So literature is able to answer those big questions. What is identity? What is a belief? What is an idea? What does it mean for us to have ideas? How do we interact with those things? What does it mean? This identity is a big theme through this book. It's in a Cormac McCarthy style, so it's about survival. It's always about death and life versus some imaginary picture of life, narratives versus reality. But this is, I would say, for a Cormac McCarthy book, this is relatively soft in a sense. What I mean with that is, it's not the road. Okay, there's no apocalyptic nightmare or anything like that. It's actually relatively, I would say, almost rated PG-13 kind of book. So very entertaining, very Cormac McCarthy. You can make a movie out of this. Really well written, unbelievable language, and the most powerful thing about McCarthy are these short, powerful expressions of just life and very complex thoughts, compressed in very concise, pointy language. Examples like beauty makes promises it can't keep, or names are important for the rules of engagement, or without people that do wrong, the world of the righteous doesn't have a meaning. So this keeps going and going. I mean, this is Cormac McCarthy at its best. But I really, really strongly encourage people to read this book, not just for the beauty. And McCarthy is, like I said when I discussed Blood Meridian, he's like a Tool song. It's like this beautiful melody, and then this harsh undertone, this rhythm, this really harsh, almost brutal rhythm that just carries you. This book is not like that. It's not as much of a Tool song. I would say this is more, maybe Guns N' Roses. It's a little softer on the edges. It's still hard, but it's a little softer on the edges. It's a little bit more subtle. There's a little bit more conversation. It's not black and white as maybe some of the other books. So maybe just for new listeners, why are we doing this? Why are we discussing books? Well, we discuss books for two reasons. The purpose of this podcast is to give people a sense for what it feels like to run a hedge fund. So what we'd like to portray here is the importance of reading, not just as a pastime for hedge fund managers, but also, very importantly, for the conditioning of the mind. And I think this book is a fantastic example of that. There's many times I had to stop, rethink, reread, think about it. I think it overlaps very well with my work, because this book is about beliefs and ideas as much as it's about identity. And beliefs and ideas are things that we in the knowledge business live with. That's what we do. We create beliefs. I'm just writing an essay now about the concept of an investment idea and how useful it is, and how I think misleading it can be, because ideas are, on the one hand, very useful guides towards living in general, but they're not very useful when it comes to building a Golden Gate Bridge or a rocket or investing. You need more, and that's the validation part of things, which I think Cormac doesn't really go into. I think that's more Karl Popper, but I think those thoughts are incredibly important, and Cormac McCarthy definitely touches upon that. This is a Not Even Wrong podcast. It's February 7th, 2023. This is Krim Delco. For the day, the fund is up 2%. The market is up 1.3%. For the year, we're up 64.3%. The market's up 8.3%. We're outperforming by 56%. This is a book discussion on Cormac McCarthy's latest published book, The Passenger. Like we said in the prelude, it's a highly recommended book. Like everything, we're big Cormac McCarthy fans here, and we don't want to dwell too much time into why he's an important author. Let's just dive right into the book. So the book is, there's a plot here. It's an interesting book. It's entertaining, but the real power of Cormac's writing is that he's able to put very complex thoughts into very concise language. I think this is the most powerful thing, and this book is full of. It's one of those books, like some books, you can read the whole book and summarize it in one page, and in some books, every page could be its own book. This is one of those where almost every paragraph you could write a whole book about it. So the plot is about, I would say there's two main themes. One is the theme of an idea. What is an idea? What's the life of an idea? How does it proliferate throughout society? And what impact does it have on society? And what impact does society have on ideas? It's a reciprocal relationship. Ideas, McCarthy alludes to the thought that ideas have their own existence, and we sort of grab them. And by writing down ideas, we kind of put edges around something which organically evolves. Ideas are evolution. Evolution is ideas. This is also very Karl Popper. So this is one of the big themes in the book. I think it manifests itself in different situations throughout the book, in different ways, in different tangents. And I think it's very interesting how we're actually right now working on an essay about that, about the concept of investment ideas. It really, this is a nice example of how reading books really can have a big influence on the hedge fund business. And that's been something that we've been talking about many times in this podcast series, that reading is not just a pastime of a hedge fund manager. It is part of the business. You really have to. I mean, that's why people like Buffett say you got to read books. It's not just something they tell their kids. This is why it's so important. It's conditioning of the mind. It's, you know, we humans, we like to I guess understand the world in narratives, and reading novels is helpful on that front. I think the other big theme is the concept of identity. It starts with, let's say, some even political statements of Cormac McCarthy. There's, you know, the transgender issues, which are not really part of the book, but it just appears. I think that's not the key. The key here is really about identity in a very transcendent way. What do I own my identity? Does the government have a say in my identity? How do I decide who I am? What does it actually mean to be somebody? And you know, do I only have one existence? Can I have several existences? There's questions of, well, is the existence on Earth really the only thing? What about the multiverse? It doesn't appear in the book specifically, but there's the question of several identities, which could be interpreted as a sort of a multiverse, you know, point of view of the concept of identity. Those are the two main vectors that weave through the book. One is the concept of identity, and the other is the concept of an idea. And I want to discuss them a little bit more deeper now. Let's start with the concept of identity. So the protagonist here is first, even in the actual crafting of the character, McCarthy is very careful. He does, I would say, a very good job in terms of, I think, sculpting the character out of a big marble block. You start with something and then you slowly start realizing who this person is. But of course, the identity of that person is highly related to our imagination of that person. I mean, just, I don't want to give away too much of the plot, but the book starts with, let's say this is a salvage diver, so you have this feeling, okay, this is a guy who does pretty, dangerous work. But then slowly the identity starts weaving itself through the book, and this person turns into something very different. A very, very, sensible, soft-spoken, intelligent, almost scientific type person. And then there's other things that happen that I don't want to give away here. So again, I think identity is sort of, is it in the eye of the beholder? To some extent it isn't, to some extent it isn't. But those are the big questions that I think, that's why I compared this book, let's say, to the Sauberberg, which has a lot of those types of questions. What is identity? Who are we as a people? How do we define who we are? Well, we are what we do, we are what we think, we do what we think. So these things are all interrelated. And this brings me to the second big theme of the book, which is actually identity. And again, I think in this time of identity politics and all that, this could be sort of misunderstood as, oh gosh, it's one of those books. No, not at all. This is not about identity politics or any of that stuff. The concept of identity is a very fundamental question of what am I, who am I, why do I think that I am what I am? I mean, those are unbelievably important questions, and that's what I meant in the prelude. Those are only questions novelists can ask. This is not something science can answer. What is identity? Is the thing that you relate to as a person. And identity is the thing that, let's say, a whole nation can go. So it is something you relate to. And the question is now, how do you actually relate to something? What makes you relate to yourself? Well, it's the thoughts that you have. I think we always come back to the same thing, which is, I am what I think. I am what's in my brain. And then, of course, I am also what I do. But there's another character in the book. There's two main protagonists. Well, this other character is, in my view, trying to make the point that there is no such thing as one identity. I can choose my identity, and I can even choose not to live. I mean, I can go that far. I mean, there's a concept of suicide, but that's not the point. The physical existence of somebody is almost secondary. What's more important is her way of thinking about something, and that's transcendent. That even survives the person. So those are very deep thoughts, because think about it. Like, let's say you are, what is your life really? What do you do? I said many times, you are what your agenda is. 5 years from now, you're going to be what you do today. So what is it you do today? That's who you're going to be. This is your life. You have to live your life with some sort of purpose in order to even have a life. And if you don't, then what is the point? And this is another theme in this book where the one of the protagonists drifts through life, and you start asking yourself, well, what is the purpose of that person's life? Why does he even live? I mean, what's the point here? And then you start realizing that, and McCarthy makes those, alludes to certain aspects of the answer to that question. Well, you got to have loved ones. You got to have something to leave behind. There's one character that dies in the book that then shows up again in a dream, in a conversation. That person's soul still lives. That person is somebody because they had interesting thoughts, for example. So those are the kinds of things, like, which of course contrasts what, let's say, a lot of people do in life, which is live just day by day, trying to have, execute mundane tasks and not ask themselves the deep questions. Why am I even here? What is it I'm trying to achieve? Those are really interesting questions. For us at Orange Capital Partners, for example, it started with, this is very important also for your business. If you're thinking of starting a hedge fund, for example, well, try to sit back and think, why am I doing this? What is the purpose of me? And the purpose can be like we have, generate wealth. It's fine. That's a good purpose. Wealth is the measure of wealth is freedom. To generate freedom is a good thing. That's what we decided. But that's an idea. Everything is an idea. In fact, once everything is said and done, another theme in the book is the atomic bomb and destruction. Let's say we blow ourselves up. Is there anything left? Well, one thing that's left is the idea that we can blow ourselves up. The whole evolution of humankind, from, I guess, back from the Big Bang all the way to now, led to us developing something which can blow ourselves up. Well, maybe that's the whole, but whatever. But even that is still transcendent. So I think the concept of ideas, I'm actually writing an essay right now independently, but maybe it's not independently because I started reading the book, and then I came across all these big idea of 2023 type newsletters and emails and all that investment firms send out. So I thought to myself, let me write an essay about this because I'm in the investment business. Why don't we have the big ideas of 2023? And the more I dissect ideas and the more I think about ideas, I am getting to the conclusion that the big investment idea literature is very misleading, that ideas themselves are very powerful tools, of course, very important and very, very to be taken very seriously, because ideas are that's what we are. Ideas are evolution, like a mutation somewhere in the jungle, and the evolution of a new species in a new biotope. That's an idea. It has different names. It's called mutation by genetic mutation and blah blah blah. But in the end, it's the same thing. It's David Deutsch calls it knowledge or proper, like finding solutions to problems. That's what ideas are. So let's get back to this book. I don't want to jump ahead too far ahead of myself. Again, Cormac McCarthy's The Passenger is a book about identity and ideas, which at some point merged the same thing. We are. My identity is the idea of who I am, and the idea of who I am is my identity. So there's a recursiveness there. But I don't want to be caught in sort of vacuous phrases here. So I'm trying to put some meat around the bone, which is, who am I? Well, I am what I do. And what do I do? Well, I do what my ideas make me do. And my ideas are based on my value system, which again is based on my specific niche that I evolved to survive. So that's the way I think. I might be wrong, but I think I want to have a little bit. So, some people survive by lying and cheating. I think I can survive by creating value for other people and also enrich myself by doing that. I have my own issues with, let's say, the government. I think the US government is overreaching in many ways in the freedom of speech, in the freedom of also spending my money and those sort of things. So I have my issues. I don't want to break the law, but I'm also not a happy-go-lucky, anything goes type of guy. So I'm trying to improve the world around me, I think, as much as I can. And that's sort of my idea. So, and this is what I think transcends in this book is what's the purpose? Why do you do what you do? And this person, the protagonist in the book, there's two, one, a man and a woman. The woman really from the get-go says there's no point, and the man tries to find purpose, and I think finds some sort of purpose towards the end. You do find purpose in his existence, in the conversations that he has and the ideas that he is able to exchange in those conversations. That in itself is value, even though maybe there's no concrete, tangible, I do this to achieve that type of thing. But there's some value in having conversations, for example, and having people to have those conversations with. So to summarize, The Passenger by Cormac McCarthy is, I think for me, it's a book in the league of the Zauberberg, Grapes of Wrath. It's a generational book. It's a novel that encapsulates our time and our thinking and our exposure to our, like I like this idea that literature is also reflects society, because whatever we pick up from the novel is what the contemporary sensitivities are. So whatever is picked up by, let's say, society in this particular novel, that those are the sensitivities, the identity, the idea. I think those things are incredibly contemporary things, but they're also, I think they're evergreens. But nevertheless, I think it's important to put that in context, that this book, maybe written 50 years before, would have touched on different sensibilities. Maybe not. That's hard to say. It's difficult to do a counterfactual, because you can't write this book 50 years ago and see what would happen. But I still think that we are looking at the world through a certain lens, and the lens in itself is shaped by the world and is shaping the world. So there's a lot of that kind of contemporary, there's recursiveness in everything, of course, and we're trying to avoid that as much as we can, because recursiveness at some point becomes a little bit absurd. But nevertheless, it's there, and we should recognize it. So that's really important. And the ideas we shape form our identity, and our identity forms the ideas we shape. Thank you.